Hi, it's Adrian here. Just going through how to install a solenoid valve. What we've got here is what replicates a mainline trench. The way at EcoStream we do a mainline. So we've got our main pipe here and we've got our conduit for our cable here. Generally, things change from time to time, but generally what we're doing these days is we're laying the main line and we're coming back later to install the solenoid valve. There will be times you do it as you go, and the process remains pretty much the same. So what I have to do first is work out where my solenoid valve box is going and how deep I'm going to have to dig. I need to get this frame. This is really for our commercial projects. I need to get this frame in. I need to get a little bit of gravel underneath this frame, and I need to dig a hole for this box. So essentially, what I want to roughly dig is about 400 for the box and the frame, and then about 50 mil for the gravel that the frame's going to sit on. So we'll just dig this out now really quick. Alright, so what I've done now is I've now made an area for us to install this solenoid valve. Essentially what I've done, look, normally what we do, and I'm just, for the sake of not wrecking the sand here, what we'd want to do out in the field is chuck some quarter minus in under the base, just to give it some stability there. You'd shake it around, you'd try to get about 50 mil in, which means you've got to dig about 50 mil deeper. But the sand works pretty well, so for the moment we're just chucking it straight in. We always, on the box, have the bolt end facing upstream. What we're going to do is get it roughly 20 mil below finished surface level. This edge here is representing our finished surface level here, which is fine, that's level, and it's sitting about 20 mil below the finished edge. And now what we're going to do is just knock this in until it's nice and level. Check the level again on the edge. We're still about 20 mil below there. So that's perfect. Now we can move on to actually putting our tapping saddle in and installing our valve. I wanted to run through now how to do the tapping saddle. Now we've got the frame in, we've got the height, it's all nice and ready to go. What we're going to do now is talk about best way to put the tapping saddle on. When you clamp this tapping saddle on, essentially it's two sides, so it clamps around the pipe. We're going to have it facing straight up because we have the depth to roll an elbow over, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. There's a couple of ways of doing this. You can either clamp the tapping saddle on first and drill through it, or you can do the hole first and drill first and then clamp it on later. One way of getting your hole size right is by using a step drill. These step drills are fantastic. And what you're going to do is mark the maximum size that you can drill to. So that's what we're going to do first. And we're going to count down the steps as we go. So that's the hole size we can do. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to drill straight into the top of the pipe. And I can see that hole size there. Perfect. So we'll just test that there. Probably go a little bit deeper. There we go. And that hole size is now perfect for the tapping saddle. Alright, next thing we have to do is make sure all the parts of the tapping saddle are here. What you want to do is ensure that this O-ring is in. The last thing you want to do is an entire job and find a leftover O-ring rolling around in the back of your ute. So chuck that O-ring in. Then what you're going to do is going to put the bolts in. Really important to keep the bolts away from the sand. And what they're going to do, you're going to push them in and they're going to hold themselves in. So the bolts in, and we're going to keep these nuts and bolts as far away from the soil or the sand as we can. So I've just drilled out this tapping saddle, and we've got the all ready for the tapping saddle, and I've got the tapping saddle ready. I'm going to put it around here. Keep everything nice and clean. And what I'm going to do is going to ensure that it's all lined up with the hole that I've already drilled. Next thing is I'm going to put some form of lubricant on it. This is silicone tap grease. We've got another type of grease, or similar to grease, that we use for that's called antibacterial pipe lubricant. You could use that, and you just put it onto each of the bolts. Just got to cut that off. And what that's going to do is it's going to stop the grit catching onto the thread and stripping the bottom of the tapping saddle out, because it's just a bit of plastic holding the bolt in. We're going to start putting the bolts in now, and we want to tighten them up in a similar way that you tighten up a wheel back on a car. You want to kind of just keep going around. You don't want to tighten one side too tight and then tighten the other side. You just want to keep slowly working around, tightening them evenly. So what we've done, this is located nicely over the hole. We're going to screw that in. So now what we do is we measure a bit of PVC. I'm not going to glue it. Watch the videos for gluing to see how to glue properly. But essentially we're going to push this in here, nice and tight. Going to push that in there. Make sure it's nice and glued properly. You can see, now what's cool about this here is that we've now, because we notched the frame out, and if you want to watch how to do that, you watch the frame notching video or the frame making video. We don't have to cut a box anymore. This is going to go through nice and straight. Now notice how I've got my valve set up. None of this is actually Teflon, this is just for demonstration. This is how I've got the valve. It turns on and off, up and down like that, so it's off now, it faces up. It doesn't face down. You wouldn't be able to turn it off otherwise, so it's always going to face off. You want then when you turn it on, for it to face the direction of flow. So you can see now we've been able to put a small nipple in there because it falls in beside that. Imagine if you had this twisted over, it hit there, you wouldn't be able to turn it on fully. So that's the way to do it. Next thing we need to do is get our conduit in. And cut it back here. And I'm going to cut a section out. So now I've cut a section of conduit out of here. Now this is when, obviously we don't have wire in there yet, we're pulling the wire later. So what we're going to do, we're going to glue, once again look at the gluing videos, we're going to glue these onto here. Glue this onto here, and we're going to create some spots to pull the cable through here. And now we're going to undermine that to be able to get our flexi conduit into. I'm going to glue that, once again watch the gluing video, glue and primer that into there. Glue and primer that into there. I'm going to neatly cut these off. Going to show you a slight alternative of this setup. So the only real concern in all of this, the only time this wouldn't work, is when the main line's sitting a little bit higher. This main's actually very deep. So imagine if the main ran more like minimum industry standards, it could run even up at this height. So what could you do in that situation? And what we would do is we'd put the tapping saddle, let's say the main ran along here, we would have put the tapping saddle facing straight out that way, would have glued this in, and we would have rolled it around so it fits into this space here. So just imagine this bit's not in here, we tapping saddle straight out, and then we can adjust it for whatever height we need. And what we'd be adjusting it to is to go through that frame. So we're nearly done. What I'm going to do here is just backfill this a little bit. Just where I undermined it, I just want to get a bit of sand into there, sand in there. What we're going to do is we're going to put the valve box on. Once again, the bolt always faces back this way. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a bit of a skirt over this. Make sure we cover all the pipe and the holes nicely. That goes over the frame. What we're going to do is duct tape this skirt. So I'll just duct tape that now. So we're pretty much ready to backfill now. What we're going to do is just make sure the box is nice and central. And what you're probably going to do at this point is get someone to help you. Zach, come over here and stand. I'll get you to stand on this box. That way it's not going to move. Just place all the soil on the skirt first. So we've finished doing the install. Last thing we want to do, obviously we're going to wire it. That's going to be in a separate video, and so is cable pulling. But the way we're going to finish it off is we're going to mark, using a cow ear tag and a cable tie, what number valve this in. So let's just make up a valve number. So let's just call it 23. 23 makes it easier for someone to come and identify what it is when we give an as-built plan. And what we're going to do is we're going to cable tie that into the bolt hole here. Normally people they don't need us to bolt the valve box lids down. If they did want us to bolt the valve box lids down, you would maybe put it onto the cable on top of the solenoid valve, and then you snip that off. And we finish it off. The thing I'll say is try not to install them in areas that are too steep. If possible, choose a location that isn't a steep location. And you'll always want to use the natural ground level, if you have natural ground level, to install to whatever angle is running. So if we're on a nicely sloping lawn, we wouldn't install this level with using a spirit level. We'd have to use a hard edge to work out what angle we've been installing it on. And that's it, that finishes it off. So I'll get Rich to come over and have a look inside the valve box so you can see how they look finished.